Hey, what's good, tubers? Nannu here, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about why you shouldn't join the military. Now, I understand that this, to some at least, might seem like an incendiary statement, and so before we jump into it, let me just be very clear about where I stand here. I'm not trying to impugn anyone personally for their decision to join the military, US or otherwise.
Unless you play Alliance.
I'm a veteran myself, and I have many friends and family who made that difficult decision to join. While I certainly have strong criticisms of the United States government and its military, I am a big believer in the idea that you shouldn't hate the player, you should hate the game. But in all seriousness, blaming American foreign policy blunders on individual actors is, I believe, not just misguided, but also doesn't actually help fix the problem, which is ultimately what I'm into.
Probably not.
My concern is that there's a lot of time and energy spent trying to persuade people into joining the military. I know it's unlikely that a whole lot of people are going to see this, and I'm not likely to spark any sort of real, widespread change on this issue, but my hope is that maybe I can give sort of a counterbalance to a lot of the pro-military arguments you might be hearing right now. Plus, I think a lot of people who are arguing against the military, or joining the military specifically, will come across as either maybe a little condescending, pretentious, or moralizing, something along those lines, and I desperately want to avoid that. So what I've done is compile a list of 10 reasons why I think you shouldn't join the military.
Welcome to WatchMojoJojo.com. Today we'll be taking a look at the top 10
reasons why I think you shouldn't join the military. Number 10. Recruiters lie. Now, I think if you're going to take anything away from this video, this is hopefully the thing you take away. If you take anything away from this video, I hope it's this. Recruiters lie. I'm not merely saying that recruiters are legally allowed to lie about the terms of your enlistment contract, although they are. And I'm not merely saying that they're strongly incentivized to tell you whatever you want to hear in order to get you to sign on that dotted line, although again, that is true. What I'm saying is that, statistically speaking, if you're in talks with a recruiter, they have already lied to you. And that is something I think you should keep in mind, because a lot of people may be under the misapprehension that they are being truthful, or that there is some sort of legal obligation to properly disclose the risks and benefits, and that's just not the case. Number 9, you're not going to get the benefits you're entitled to. One of the main reasons that I joined the military was to provide for my then family and to one day be able to finish my college degree. So after serving honorably, I was allegedly entitled to post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, which would help pay for the cost of college, including tuition and a small stipend to help, cover rent and food and stuff like that, right?
That's communism!
Now, I know I'm something of an edge case here, but it took me 7 months for me to get my first GI Bill payment, and from then on out, it was about every other month that they would actually pay out. In fact, the United States government still owes me thousands of dollars, but there's literally no way I'm going to get to see any of it. And the GI Bill is one of the big selling points of joining the military. I'm sure you've heard them before.
Clear. Oh yeah, look at that, right through the windshield.
A lot of these benefits that are yours on paper are going to not be delivered to you. There is a good chance that you will not get all, or even sometimes any, of the benefits that you have earned. In fact, when I was serving, the Republicans, as they tend to do every couple of years, throw a giant hissy fit and defund the entire government. And in that case, I was expected to continue to put my life and my well-being on the line for literally no pay. Just another one of the, countless fallouts of just insane right-wing tactics for you. But anyway, I'm trying to keep this as apolitical as I can. Number 8, there's additional laws that you will be subject to. So in addition to following, rules and regulations and the orders of the higher-ups in the strict hierarchical structure that the military has, there's actually, and not a lot of people know this, at least not a lot of civilians anyway, there's an additional set of laws that you are obliged to follow. And I'm not going to go through the entire UCMJ, which is the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, even more so than the laws that govern general American society. The UCMJ is extremely conservative. For example, adultery is a criminal offense under the UCMJ, which is fucking insane. And keep in mind that they're only allowed to enforce these rules against active duty service members. So what that means is that if you, as an active duty military member, cheats on your spouse, you can receive harsh legal and even sometimes extra legal punishments for that action. Meanwhile, your spouse, your partner, is under no such legal obligations. Seems kind of fucked up, right? Number 7, the strict caste system. The strict hierarchy of the military is something that not only bothered me on a deep personal level, but also just doesn't make any logical sense. When you are subject to following orders rather than using your own critical thinking skills, it's a lot easier to manipulate and control and to force people into doing things they ordinarily wouldn't do otherwise. So, as you may already be aware, the rank structure in the United States military falls into 2 separate camps. You've got enlisted and officer. Now, when you're signing up for the military, the only thing that distinguishes between whether you're eligible to become an officer to get a commission, or if you come in as enlisted, is the amount of college education you have completed.
That's fucked up.
So, if you've completed a bachelor's degree, you or higher upon entry into the service, you come in as an officer. And officers have a lot of special privileges that enlisted people do not enjoy. Of course, there's the, enforced respect. They're given a lot more responsibility. Their pay is way better. They tend to have much safer positions when it comes to deployments and things of that nature. In general, it's better to be an officer. Meanwhile, enlisted people are people who you can have some college, but you haven't attained a bachelor's degree. So if you have an associate's degree and you sign up for the military, you're not eligible for a commission. So here's the weird thing. Promotions on the enlisted side are extremely competitive. In fact, once you start to get to the higher echelons in the enlisted ranks, you basically have to have a master's degree or a doctorate in order to earn that promotion. Meanwhile, you can, as an officer, receive no further education beyond a bachelor's degree and make it all the way up to general. Now, that's not typically how it happens, but what that means in practice is that your commanding officer not only knows less about your job and, how to actually directly manage you as, a higher enlisted person would, but they're also typically less educated, which is ridiculous. There is a little bit of a caveat I'll have to give here, in that at least among the enlisted corps, there tends to be a little bit more respect given to, a master sergeant, for example, as opposed to a general, because there is a little bit more of camaraderie and, shared experience, shared suffering to kind of go along there. On a structural and power level, they are always going to be behind the officers of that same level of promotion. And another important thing I need to kind of slip in here is that the transition from being enlisted to an officer is basically impossible. A few decades ago, it was more of a possible transition, but, in a more modern military context, it just doesn't happen that way. Number 6, you'll lose relationships. So this point is going to tie into the next point, so I'll go pretty brief on this one, but the easiest way to lose a girlfriend, to lose contact with your family, to get a divorce, etc., is to join the military. Maybe not literally. There's probably some profession or whatever with a higher divorce rate, but they're very few and far in between. Fact of the matter is, the incredible amount of time commitment, the stress and pressures of the job, the frequent deployments, and training, events and things of that nature, TDYs, etc., means that you're going to be physically separated in addition to being emotionally separated from people who you ordinarily would otherwise be close to. Number 5, the brainwashing. I said the previous one kind of rolls into it, and it does. So in basic training, what happens is really can only be described as brainwashing. And I know this might sound extreme. I'm not being hyperbolic or poetic about this. The purpose of basic training is brainwashing and indoctrination. And the brainwashing and indoctrination techniques are actually remarkably similar to those that you would see in like a religious cult, for example. And, this is of course not by accident. This is intentionally crafted in order to achieve maximum compliance of the individuals. So, what are some of these techniques that they use to brainwash people? Well, the first one, and this is classic brainwashing 101 technique here for you, separate people from their primary support networks, particularly emotional support. So, by sequestering people off for, it's like 8 to 12 weeks, it varies, and, of course, there can be additional training and stuff, whatever. Over the course of basic training, you are completely cut off from your friends and family. There are, ostensibly, you'll get a 5-minute phone call once a week. However, this is subject to the whim of your training instructor, or at least that's what we call it in the Air Force, whatever, the drill sergeant or whatever the freaking Army and jarhead types do. But yeah, you're separated from your family and friends, limited contact with the outside world, if any. There's also strict ritualistic behavior, physical and emotional punishments, the constant inability to control even the most minor aspects of your life, to include the style of dress, to include the style of hair, to basically everything outside of religious belief, which is strongly encouraged, but that's a whole nother issue. Number 4, you lose all of your freedoms. So, again, kind of dovetailing off of the last one, joining the military means that you lose all of your freedoms. A lot of people joke about how you're signing your life away when you join the military, but I think a lot of people underestimate just the sheer totality of how much they own you as a person. Now, some of these might seem like minor gripes, but I think when taken in totality, it kind of illustrates just truly how unfree you are if you are a military member. You have no control over your dress and appearance. Right? For example, you must shave your face. You must cut your hair short and in one of very limited styles. You're not allowed to dye your hair any sorts of crazy colors. Tattoos I think they've loosened up a little bit on them since I got out, but generally speaking, covered up, etc. No piercings and stuff. Again, now if you're more conservative by nature, this might not sound bad, but there's additional restrictions. For example, your time is not your own. Whether awake, asleep, on vacation, no matter what, you can be called into work, right? They control when you wake up, choose when you sleep, how much you can sleep, if you manage to catch any sleep at all. They can put restrictions on your free speech, your political activities, and I could go on and on and on. There's countless little examples like this, but I think there's one important freedom, in fact, possibly the most important freedom, that you lose when you join the military. Number 3, you might die. Not everyone who joins the military dies. In fact, most people who join probably aren't going to see any sort of real combat and unlikely to actually die. However, the fact of the matter remains is that you have no freedom and they control you in totality, including your very life. You can be ordered to die. And that's kind of crazy to think about, right? Because your average rank-and-file soldier has no choice in what wars we're getting involved in. They have no choice in the targets. All of those decisions are made by, frankly, terrible people who are miles and miles away. Number 2, they'll break you. So I don't want to go into too many details here because, frankly, this video is already getting a little too depressing for my taste. But something to keep in mind if you're considering joining the military is that when you leave the military, or in a lot of cases even before then, you will be permanently disabled and broken. Not that this diminishes your value as a human being or anything like that, and I'm not even talking purely physically either. Now again, this is sort of anecdotal, but including myself, everyone I've known who's ever served has come out with some sort of mental or physical issue related to their service. Whether it's blowing out your knees from running all the time, whether it's PTSD from combat, or, And again, as I mentioned earlier, sexual assault in the military is extremely common. It's notoriously rampant. I'm not saying this defines you or will necessarily ruin your life, but it is something to keep in mind, that the odds of you getting out whole are slim. Even if you don't die, even if, the worst doesn't happen to you, it's going to be hard to come back, if you can come back at all. Number 1, you're making the world a worse place. Again, I'm not trying to impugn anyone's personal decisions here. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad or guilty about, their decisions. And I'm not trying to say that there's never been any positive results from military engagement done by the U.S. military, because of course that's not true. World War II, famous example. But when we're talking big picture, overall, I do think that it has a negative impact on the world. And I guess the question is are you comfortable with participating in that directly? And ultimately, I wasn't.